Welcome to Controlled Chaos. My name is Shana, and I have Christina here with me today. You want
Hi,
to introduce
everybody.
yourself? Kind of tell us about you a little bit?
Okay, sure. So, hi, you guys. My name is Christina. I'm 35 years old. I live in North County, San Diego. But I actually lived on Hawaii on the island of Oahu for 10 years. So I kind of grew up there in a way. But I'm from a town in San Diego called Rancho Penasquitos. And yeah, I've kind of bounced all over, but right now I work in treatment at a program in Escondido called Serenity House. It's actually the last place that I ever used. Sorry, I'm like nervous. Hold on.
That's okay.
Take a drink of my water. Okay. So I was addicted to meth and heroin for 16 years. Just a brief rundown of like my childhood. I had a really, really good childhood. Both of my parents are still together. I was an athlete. We played a lot of like sports as kids. I have an older sister. She's really successful, but my problem started with an eating disorder. Like that's what I struggled with from like age 9 to 13. I was obsessed with being skinny. And I was bigger than my group of friends. Like I was probably the biggest one. I was probably like a size 11, which isn't even big. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get down to a size 11 now, but that instilled like severe body dysmorphia. And so I think growing up in like Southern California, and just, in the early 2000s where there you didn't really see many plus size girls and in magazines. And so I struggled with that and I was desperate and I was doing coke and taking pills, and someone gave me some pills that said they would help me lose weight, and I didn't realize it was Adderall. So I'm like 14, 15 years old, like popping these pills, and eventually ended up on meth by the time I was 16. I had to leave high school for a few months to go to rehab, and like everybody knew, and I was like the girl that went to rehab. And I just was trying to do it for my parents at that point. And I actually managed to graduate high school because I did like homeschool my senior year, and I worked part time at like a restaurant, and I was using terribly. Like I would tweak out and go. I was a hostess at a steakhouse, and I would just like run all over the restaurant, like just oh my god. But I just can't imagine what I must have looked like. Like I was so young. I was 16 years old, fucking smoking meth before going into the restaurant, looking like me looking at that now, like I cannot imagine finding a group of 16-year-olds smoking meth. Like I would be like in shock. Like, what are you all doing? So I was just like, I strive for the darkness. Like I wanted to be, I don't know. I just was attached to like, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but drawn to the darkness. And, you know, most people, if they found out like, someone was doing heroin around them, they would be like, oh God, got to break that, relationship. But me, when I found out that someone was shooting heroin in my bathroom, I made him shoot me up. I was like, give me some. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like 19 years old. I have an apartment that my parents are paying for because I'm going to school in Long Beach, but not really going to school. Um, and yeah, so I found a guy shooting heroin in my bathroom. And so at this point, I was doing meth and heroin. I dropped out of college in my second year, and I went to treatment 4 times, 2 times at Serenity House where I work now, and 2 times at Whiteside Manor in Riverside. This was in 2009. It was basically like a whole year of rehab. Like I completed, and I would go to sober living. I would try and go to meetings and shit, but I just couldn't fight those impulsive urges that I would get. Like when I would get a craving, I'd be like, oh my God, I have to act on this. There's no other option but to act on it. Your coping tools are not going to work for me. Like I'm not going to sit here and take some deep breaths and go to a meeting and call my sponsor, because that's not going to work for me, because I'm such a bad addict. So anyways, I don't know, I don't want to like tell my whole story without letting you talk a little, but that's kind of like my childhood. But it was in 2010 that my parents sent me to Hawaii. There's a like behavior modification program there that's 3 years long. It's very intense. Most of the people there are like, felons that are about, if they don't finish the program, are going to do their time. Like it's very involved in the Hawaii judicial system. So my parents shipped me out there with the clear understanding that if you fuck this up, Christina, we're not bringing you home. And I'm 20, like turning 21 at this point. I'm like, no, I'm good. I want to get sober. And we're thinking like it's beautiful. It's on the water. The brochures make it look beautiful. And yes, it is in a beautiful location. But do you know much about behavior modification rehab?
A little bit, yeah.
So this program is like militant. Like as soon as you get there, two girls take you directly to a shower, make you undress, shower. They watch you shower. You got to do the squat and cough and everything. And then they give you their clothes to wear. Like you can't even wear what you brought. Like they have this big room full of clothes and you can only wear their clothes. And they would shave. It was 120 people, men and women. I would say like 70% locals, and then like 30% like white kids from the mainland or like other kids from the mainland. And so getting there, I was so young and just so naive. And I tried really, it was like, get up at 6, make your bed. The corners have to be perfectly tucked. You go everywhere with a buddy. You go to the bathroom with a buddy. You can't look at the men. You can't talk to the men. And then they have these things called games. And, it's like, all right, you're not, you're not allowed to like talk to the men or curse or do anything like that. But during games, there's no rules. And so you can yell at whoever you want and say whatever you want to. And they encourage like being mean and hitting the spots that, they know are going to make you tick, because it's supposed to train you to like, I don't know, it's some form concept of treatment that is called behavior modification. And they use this type of treatment in like youth homes. I've heard, or not youth homes, but like those camps that they send you to off, but anyways, so it was a really, really hard program. I was there for 3 months, and uh, I kept getting in trouble. And when you'd get in trouble, they would give you these weird punishments, like sit in the corner and face the wall for an hour, for all day long, for 18 hours long, and clean the same chair out in public. And what they do is like they put you out in the courtyard on display with like a sign around your neck, cleaning the same chair for 8 to 10 hours. You can't talk, you can't laugh. If they see you laugh, your time starts over. Like just really strict, like really fucking strict. And it was traumatizing. And I tried to roll with it, but I ended up bouncing out to go get high, and I was gone for a whole weekend. I still to this day have no idea what happened that weekend. I know I hiked my ass up the main road. It was like a 2 mile like through the green pastures and shit, and I get to the main road and I look right and I look left and I don't see anything but green. And like, it's like there isn't like any stores around. I'm like, fuck, I'm just gonna start walking. And so I know I found a homeless dude to smoke some dope with. And then 3 days or 4 days later, I was in a downtown high rise in downtown Honolulu with some tweakers taking apart some laptops. And I was calling my dad, trying to get him to fly me home. And I didn't have a phone. I was like using people's phones, mind you. I didn't have anything when I left Tabilitat. I didn't have $1. But I hustled so after 4 days, I go back to this program, desperate because I don't know what to do. At this point, I've gotten high. I'm coming down, I'm not at a point where I'm willing to like sell my body for anything. So how am I going to survive out here? So I try and go back to this program, and they put me in the corner for 10 days. And so at 6 a.m., I would wake up and go sit in the corner. They bring you your meals, and they might take you on 1 or 2 smoke breaks. And the 10th day, and you never know how long the punishment's going to go on either. Like what they do is they bring you up in front of the whole class, the whole family. Everyone's looking at you. All right, have you learned your lesson? All right. No, I'm going to keep you on it. Or, all right, you're off. And like the women would have to wear like stocking caps and like tuck their hair up into it and shit. And I just finally said, fuck it. I couldn't do it anymore. But
after 10 days,
he had brought me up in front of the family and made it seem like he was going to take me off. And then he put me back on. I don't know, probably because I was bitching or complaining or doing something I wasn't supposed to. I was very rebellious, and I had an attitude, and I definitely did not know how to control my emotions. So I would have these angry outbursts, threats to hurt myself, like I'll fuck you up, getting in your face, like just not being able to control myself like I can now. And so yeah, I was a problem, a troublesome client. But I mean, the long version or the short version of Hawaii, because my time in Hawaii could be a whole podcast in itself, is um, I was homeless on the streets for a little bit, and then I found a way to a homeless shelter, and I was asking everybody, like, where do you think I should go? And they recommended another program on the other side of the island, which is actually in Waianae. It's on the west side. Anybody who's been to visit Oahu knows that, like, that whole side of the island is where all the drugs are and the gangs, and it's probably the worst side of the island as far as, like, I don't know. Anyway, so I ended up there, and I went to their program for like 3 months. It was a cultural program. It was AA based. It was like a program I was familiar with. There's men and women. There was like 20 of us, and we would go out and do activities, and it was actually really fun. And I learned hula, and we had to like introduce ourselves in Hawaiian every morning. And I learned chants, and I'm like the only white person there. So I'm also getting bullied really bad by like the local girls. They were really mean to me. And then the local guys just like wanted to fuck me, and the girls didn't like that, So I was just getting bullied, and I couldn't really make any friends, and I couldn't stay clean. So I graduated that program and went to sober living for a little bit, and then I ended up getting high with some dude at Burger King. Did a fat line of meth in the bathroom. Like, my nose is so fucked up from snorting meth. Like, anyways, um, but that began my journey of being homeless in Hawaii, on and off for the next 8 years. And at some point in those years, I met a man that I fell in love with, and he decided to use those feelings against me, and he abused me in every way you could possibly think of. But trafficking me was probably the worst of it. And so that is probably like the thing I carry the most shame about. And the things that, like, I'm still really, really working on, like in step work and therapy and stuff. But yeah, how it looked like was, I had managed to get a little car that, like a loan, and my dad helped me, and I got like a shitty little car, and I ended up living in it. And there's not really any heroin or like opiates or fentanyl on that side of the island. It's mostly just meth. And so I wanted to find some heroin or some oxys or some downers or something. Like, everybody was just doing meth. And they're like, well, you got to go downtown for that shit. So I packed my shit up and made my way downtown. Um, Not like I had any shit to pack up, but it was just, I got my shit ready to go and like live down there, in my car. And I basically I found some people that got me a dealer and shit, and I was surviving off like a 20 paper a day, like maybe panhandling. I would hold a sign. I was surviving off like a 20 paper a day, and that was not enough for me. I was a fiend. I would do the whole paper in one go. Boom, it's gone, and then I'm on to the next. And I didn't know how to hustle. I would have never dared sell my body or do anything in exchange for something like that. Also, I'll mention, the time I had spent in Hawaii, I experienced a lot of like physical violence, like men that I was hanging out with that just started, for some reason or another, like beat the shit out of me. Like, I had a guy fix this tattoo for me, and he told me that he just wanted to go practice. And that I didn't have to pay him anything. And I, told he was an older guy in his 50s, big, yoked out Hawaiian dude. Like, he was really muscular and bald head, like scary looking, like a Brada kind, and he brought me to the motel. He did the whole tattoo. And then I had a feeling something bad was going to happen. But sure enough, he's like, all right, so you're going to suck my dick. And I'm like, what? That wasn't, part of the deal. I told you I didn't have any money. And we went back and forth about it, and I had never done anything like that before. And he was just so old to me at the time. And so he ended up like beating the shit out of me and dragging me back to the car and driving me out back to Waianae, and like just basically he like locked me in, and he would just like punch me and grab me and just wouldn't let me like leave. I was like trying to jump out the car and shit. And so anyways, I'm living, so that was like prior. So now I'm in like my second year in Hawaii, and I'm just living off like barely anything. And then I meet Austin. I guess I'll just talk about it. Him and I, he knows that I talk about him on podcasts because him and I have actually, reconnected since then. He heard my story on another podcast, and he actually ended up making amends to me. So that was a pretty beautiful, like, healing part of my story. But anyways, so he had just gotten out of doing a 2-year bid, and he was still in his wife beater and jail slippers, and he had been out for 2 days, didn't know what he was going to do. And he walked up with a guy that I knew that had like helped me out a few times and let him stay at his apartment a few times. And he walked up, and like Austin was like this mixed white, Native American dude, like, but he grew up in Hawaii, so he talked like a local, and he was like Hawaiian to me. And yeah, he just immediately saw me, a vulnerable girl, tweaked out, living in her car. I did have a phone at that point. My parents were helping me with the phone and shit. And so he saw it probably as like, ooh, jackpot. He probably was taught how to traffic a woman in jail. And the best way to do it is, make them make them have feelings for you. So anyways, that's how he ended up convincing me, I guess. We knew each other for probably like a month and a half before it finally happened. He brought it up at like the 2-week mark, and I was like, no. And he was living in my car with me, and we were kind of like dating or whatever. But I kept saying like, no, I'm not gonna do that shit. But I was sick of being sick all the time. I was sick of not having the dope that I wanted. I'm sick of sleeping in my car. I was sick of fucking stealing food to survive. And he made it seem to me like, our lives would get better. And I guess you could say over the next 2 years, our lives did get better because we lived in apartments and we lived in, motels, and because with the money that I was bringing in. But I do remember the first night vividly. I was like, fuck, I just, whatever, I'll do it already. And so they had this older girl. She was like in her 40s. She like showed me what to do and walked around with me. And it was on like the Blade in Waikiki, which is like the block that all the girls walk on. And like, I had no idea what I was doing. I was like stumbling around in these stripper heels and this dress. I was like not even covering my fucking, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, hey, you want to hang out? Like, I would like run off and go get high with guys. And Austin would call me like, where the fuck are you, bitch? I don't see you. But I really got manipulated into like that bottom bitch mentality. Like, I am such a down bitch because I will do this for my man. And I will even recruit for him, and I'll be his bottom and all, like, you know what I mean? And like at 21 years old, I don't know why that lifestyle, appealed to me, because I fucking hated that shit. Like, there's nothing worse that, like, each date, there was never ever a time that I enjoyed it. And I had handsome guys come see me, I definitely had handsome military men, businessmen come see me, but I physically would get like frozen. I was like such a dead fish. Like, I was just laid there like nothing, just to get over, I don't know, just to get over with. But I did enjoy being able to shoot up as much dope as I wanted, because at this point I'm shooting up and I'm running out of veins, and I'm shooting up in my neck and my legs and my fingers and my toes. I mean, let's be real. During my addiction, I shot up everywhere. I mean, I don't even have a single vein left on my body. There's finally one creeping back on my foot that I can see. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'm healthy again. um, but but I'm trying to like tell the short version, you know what I mean? Not get too
Well, that's okay.
not get too distracted or off track. But I know a lot of people are like, how does that happen? Like, when people think of human trafficking, they think of like being kidnapped in a white van, being drugged, held against your will, tied up, and yeah, that does exist. And God forbid, like, my situation could have been a lot worse, but we ended, we did end up, having money to live places. And I was doing so much dope. Like, I was doing hundreds of dollars worth of heroin and meth every day. I could not get enough. I have never overdosed in my life. Like, I'm the type, we'll go out to a party. Everybody will take 3 e-pills and everybody will be rolling except me. I'm sober. Where's the next one? We'll go out, fucking smoke a bowl of meth. Everybody's tweaking but me. I'm like, I'm not high yet. Where, Like, it's not that I wasn't high, but it was just like, it was never enough, never enough, never enough. I would poke myself hundreds of times a day. Like, oh my God, it was just so, so bad. And I was like obsessed with this man. And I actually thought that he loved me. You know what I mean? Like, he would tell me, I'm not gonna, you're not gonna do this forever, and we're gonna save up, and we're gonna be together. And I was just really confused because I was so in love with him, and I was like, does he love me? This is wrong. Why would he want me to do this if he loved me? And I was in such inner conflict and turmoil within myself. Why am I doing this? My parents did not raise me to do
Right.
this. You know what I mean? I grew up in a good home. My parents would be god awful ashamed of me. And you know what? We lived in so many different places, and one of them, Judy, stupid fucking bitch, she was like our landlord. She found out what I was doing and she kicked us out. And she had been in communication with my mom and dad because I think they were helping with something. My dad or mom maybe was helping with a little bit. I don't know. Just they would help me a little bit. Um, and she ended up sending them a letter in the mail with a printed out ad of all of my ads, and or like a printout. She printed out all my ads on Backpage and like sent it to my parents. And I remember that day vividly, my dad calling me, and his voice was shaking. He's like, Christina, what is this? We just got, and I didn't even, I was so ashamed. I hung up the phone, and I don't ever hang up on my parents. I hung up the phone, and and I was like, Austin, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? He's like, well, you can't deny it. So I didn't know how to tell them that like I was being pressured into this, and that like I didn't want to be doing that, because he doesn't really mean bad. He loves me. This I was so warped. My thinking was so warped. And our relationship got really, really bad. One of our friends died, and we found him dead in his room. And I didn't check on him, and like I was the one that was awake that could have checked on him, and that death was really difficult for me. And Austin and I just couldn't stay clean. He was on drug court, where he had to call every day, and he was constantly going in for like little weekend bids, like in and out. That's what they do when you test dirty in Hawaii, is they'll put you in for a weekend or a week. And I would hold the fort down, and so many traumatic things happened. Like I got robbed multiple times, I got beat up, by dates, and Austin would be locked up, and I would have no one to run to. And sometimes I couldn't hold the little place we were. Usually we would do like pay by the week or something like that in the hostels. And one of the hostels we were in had fucking bed bugs. And Austin also didn't tell me that he had Hep C, and I was using his needles. And so then I had Hep C. Why didn't you tell me? Oh, and I just kept making excuses for him. Like, oh, he's just, I don't know. So that relationship was lasted for, I think like a year and a half. And at the end of it, he was the one that fucking ghosted me. We were really going like always fighting, and I was living in my car, and I was just out of my fucking mind. Like I would have these psychotic episodes trying to run him over with my car, driving up on the sidewalk, chasing him. You're not going to turn me into a fucking prostitute and then abandon me. How fucking dare you? How dare you? And so when he told me that he was going to Vegas with another girl because she had a car and they were going to ship the car to Vegas, and I lost my fucking mind. I drove over and I found him. The girl wasn't there, and that was when I was trying to drive over the sidewalk. I ended up getting out of my car, chasing him. My car is half up on the sidewalk in Waikiki. Him and his friend are trying to run away from me, and I'm sprinting after him. I'm dope sick. I'm crying. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. And I catch up to him, and we start fighting. Like he's throwing punches at me, and he throws me to the ground. And this is when he fucking goes, leave me the fuck alone, bitch. And I didn't even wipe the loogie from my face. I was in like the fetal position on the ground in Waikiki, and then he's like, fuck, and he ran off with Sean, and I rolled over, and I turned, and I was like watching him run off, and I was like, is he gonna come back? Is he gonna come back? And I realized after like 2 blocks that he really wasn't coming back. And so I stood up and I wiped the fucking spit off my face, and I walked back to my car, and I couldn't tell you what I did. Like, this is just bits and pieces of what I remember. It's blurry. This was over 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So this is what I remember. But I probably went and tried to like OD. That's what I would do, is I would probably go and send him a text and say, I'm just going to do all the dope I have and kill myself, because that's what you just did to me. Like I was like that. And I think it's important to talk about that, because I'm not like that anymore, but I was definitely a drama queen, with undiagnosed depression, bipolar, unmedicated mental health. I mean, I was just so sick. I was so sick. And how dare he come in and do that to me? And so I was absolutely traumatized to the point where like I couldn't function. And that was when I met Fred. Fred was one of my connects. He was this older Hawaiian man. He was up to my chin. And he was this older Hawaiian man with long hair, this fucking local brother that everybody called Uncle Fred. He was the coolest dude ever. And he fucking swooped in as my guardian angel. And that man, in the eight to 9 years that I knew him, never once asked me to sleep with him. Never once asked me. And over the next 8 years, he proceeded to pay for my rent, places. He proceeded to bring me dope every day when I was sick. Like, he was selling Oxy 30s. And so he made a lot of money off of those. That was when the doctors were giving him out like crazy. So Fred had like a lot of money at one point, and he took really good care of me. But after everything that happened with Austin, I moved in with Fred to his apartment for about 6 months, and I gained like 60 pounds. All I did was shoot up heroin and eat cheesecake and, fast food. Fred would go out, I would go out and run dope for Fred. He had a couple mopeds, so he gave me a moped, and like I was kind of like helping him sell dope, and everybody knew me as like his runner. And that was a good time. And I think God, definitely played that part out for me, because I probably would have killed myself or ended up dead or doing something stupid. Yeah, the addiction progressed, and ended up getting infections all over me from digging for veins and missing shots. I have had an infection on every single limb you can think of. I have a scar on my neck, my boobs, my stomach, legs, butt. Like, I've had to go to the ER so many times to get shit cut open and drained. So, that's another thing that people don't talk about because it's gross, but let's be real. Look at people in Kensington. My skin was never getting eaten like that because I wasn't doing xylazine, but skin infections is a very real part of recovery and like addiction,
Yeah.
How am I doing?
Good. I mean, you're doing it.
So the thing with me and Austin happened in 2012 to 2013, and we got a puppy in that time from our friend that we found dead. His puppy his dog had a litter of puppies, and so we had one. This is Major. So Major comes into the picture, and he's living at Fred's with me. I keep in mind all the fighting and shit that happened with Austin. We had Major. Like, Major was probably in the car when I was chasing Austin, trying to run him over.
Right.
I
Your little
was such,
sidekick.
yeah, and he would sit up on the back, like by the back window. Like, that was like his little safe space up there. But anyway, so that was in like 2013. So I started living with Fred, running dope for Fred. And that was good. Like, I was really blessed and lucky at that point. And Fred and my parents developed a relationship. And they were like, they loved Fred, and they, would talk to him frequently. So anyways, I'm trying to think what the next big point in my story is. I think it's going to be the infections. So Fred's girlfriend ended up moving back from the States. And so he's like, I love you, but you need to find another place. And so he paid for it for me. And then I got kicked out of like 2 places. And I think me and Fred would fight a lot. And he was like kind of fed up with me. And so I was back in my car. And then I was like living with this group of gay guys that were like, I love them all. Unfortunately, they were older gay guys, and like 2 of them ended up passing away in the time that I knew them. That was hard. But I was just living in this, it was basically a trap apartment. We would sell dope out of it, and I was going back to doing dates. Fred stopped selling dope at one point, and so I didn't have someone to bring me free shit all the time. So I had to go back to doing dates. And I had infections all over me that I wasn't taking care of. And I ended up getting really sick one night. Like I could feel a fever come on, and my back had been hurting for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it got worse at night. And I would go out during the day and I couldn't even stand up straight. I was hobbling around doing these quick little $80, $100 car dates, and then just getting enough dope to be well for the day. But turns out I knew that something was really wrong, and I couldn't find anyone that would take me to the ER. Um, and so the ambulance came, and when they picked me up, I just remember my temperature, and it was 102.7. And the rest is like a big blur. But I got to the ER, and they spent the next like 3 hours looking for a vein. Like all the lab techs tried all over my body, the nurses tried, and then finally they had to bring the doctor in to try. And I remember him trying to go in my neck, and they had to like tilt the table backwards so my feet were up in the air and my head was leaning back, because he was trying to get my neck vein, and the doctor couldn't even get my neck vein. And so they had to bring in an ultrasound machine and go digging around in my femoral vein. I don't know if you were IV user, but that spot like right in between your thighs, where your thighs meet your vagina, there's a vein there called the femoral vein, and it's big. It's really deep. And so if some addicts get good enough, they know how to hit it. And I was like one of them. I could also hit the one that was like really, these ones, the angry veins, those went very quickly. But I found the one deep in there. You use really long needles, go really deep, and there's a deep vein in there. Like that is so dangerous. And I was doing that like 50 times a day. It was so crazy. But I think because of all the infections I had on my arm, it ended up spreading into my spinal cord and my heart and my spleen and my lungs and my brain. Those were all the organs that were infected when I fell into a coma that lasted for 5 days.
So you were
And when
septic? Is that
yes,
what?
mm-hmm. I was
Okay.
septic, and the osteomyelitis was eating away at my spine, and the endocarditis was eating away at my heart valves. And so I almost had to have like the heart surgery. They were like thinking about it, but they decided they didn't need to because the vancomycin was working. Um, and I remember them having to use the ultrasound machine to find the vein down there. And so anyways, they determined those were all the infections that I have. And then they took me up to do an MRI. And have you ever had an MRI done?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have the panic button. And at this point, I'm like starting to get dope sick because I've been at the hospital for, probably 6 hours, and I'm starting to get dope sick. And so I can't do the MRI. I press the thing and they bring me out, and I sit up really fast. I feel this searing hot pain flash across my back, and 3 nurses around me. And then I woke up 5 days later. That's the last thing that I remember. And what had happened was I fell into a coma, and they had to put me on life support. The doctor called my parents and said that I probably wasn't going to make it, and so they should probably come out to make arrangements. And at this point, my mom has been on a walker since I was in 8th grade. She had a spinal tumor that has left her with almost no feeling in one of her legs. So she's been on a walker for a long time. My dad is developing a brain tumor. Their health is not good. And they get this phone call. And so, anyways, when I remember waking up, saw my mom and dad, and I thought I was dreaming. I was like, Mom, Dad. And my mom said they had me just really, really drugged up, and I was inches from death. I was inches from death. And the doctor said that if I did make it, I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. So the fact that like I'm alive and walking and I don't struggle with that much pain. I do have a little bit of deformity going, like called kyphosis, which is called hunchback syndrome. I have a little bit of that going on because of this, where the spinal was eaten away at. And so my parents stayed for like 3 more days, and they went and picked up Major from the trap house. Like all my friends like kept taking care of Major. So they went and picked up Major. They brought him to a hotel, and and I remained in the hospital. And once everybody knew that I was going to be okay, my parents went home with Major, and I was to follow in the next couple months. But I needed to be hospitalized for 6 to 8 weeks because the type of, I mean, that's how bad I was. And they were not going to give me a PICC line to go home with. Like some people with those infections, they'll just give you a PICC line and you can just go every day to get the medicine. But I'm an addict, so they're not going to do that for me. So I had to be in for 6 to 8 weeks. So on day 10, 11, or 12, after, having people sneak shit into me and getting caught. I mean, yeah, they had me on some stuff through the IV, but not enough to keep me high or well. And so I ended up pulling everything out and leaving, and proceeded to go back to the trap and do my thing. And a couple of weeks later, it got really bad again, and I had to go back to the ICU. And over the next 8 months, it took 8 months to completely clear the infections because I kept leaving. I went to 4 different ICUs, and I would always just end up leaving after like the third or fourth day. And one of the hospitals I went to 3 times, and the third time I went, she was like, it was a different doctor, and she came in, I was in the ER, and she's like, well, hi, Christina, you're back again. Why should we admit you if you're going to leave? And I'm like, well, listen, I'm a meth and heroin addict, and I'm withdrawing and all that. And so she actually was like, well, what can we give you so that you'll stay? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, all right, well, let me be reasonable here. I'm like, well, Dilaudid in my IV, like every 4 hours, Ativan in my IV every 4 hours, because they were giving me pills and it was just not the same.
Right.
It's like, she wrote something on her clipboard and she's like, all right, done. And I was like, really? She's like, yes, this infection needs to clear. You need to remain in the hospital. I'm like, okay. And then like 2 weeks later, I still fucking left.
Was it clear though?
It did eventually end up clearing. Did I do 6 to 8 weeks in a hospital? No, I didn't. The longest time I was in there, I think, was like 2 weeks. So there's another God shot, God saving me. He saved me so many times. But I'm trying to think where I left off. Anyways,
2 weeks in the hospital, but you left.
oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So I go back to doing my thing, and I do start to feel a little bit better. This was a very painful thing that I had in my spinal cord. So it was hard for me to walk up straight for a while. I would walk hunched over. But I was also pretty overweight at this point. I was probably like 230 pounds. Okay, so anyways, let me recenter here, because I definitely want to talk a lot about like recovery and stuff too, but I feel like my story is important. So I'm in Hawaii, I'm in the trap house, living in my car on and off. And my parents had expected me to follow. Like at this point, they wanted me to come home. After everything that happened with Austin, they wanted me to come home. But I was like, no, because then that means I have to stop shooting up, and I'm not ready for that yet.
Right.
Just due to all the trauma that I went through with Austin. And so I moved back. Fred's girlfriend ends up passing away. And then the mother of his children ends up passing away within like a 6-month period. So this poor man was alone and devastated and so depressed. He wasn't selling drugs anymore because after that, he's like, I can't contribute to this in society anymore. That's what I loved about him so much, is he was like a godly man, and he did 25 years total on and off in the pen. He was an OG felon, and he was very dear to my heart. He was like 55 when I met him, and I think it was 64 when I left. But him and I moved in together, and he had money, and he didn't want me doing dates. Like he knew how much I hated that. So he gave me like a bunch of money to just go start selling dope. And so from 2016 to 2020, that's how I survived, was selling dope. And I also had a really big gambling problem. So I would go and lose all of my money at the game room, and go home crying to Fred, and oh, you fucking stupid, huh? Oh, you fucking never listen to me. I tell you, go to those fucking game rooms. Like I could still hear his voice in my head. But then after, I would just cry and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then a couple hours would go by of him being all mad. And then he'd give me his ATM card and say, all right, go fucking re-up. Don't let it happen again. Like, he would always take care of me and help me out. Like, he gave me so much money and just took care of me. And we were just friends, like brother, sister, like uncle. We never had sex. He never asked me to. Everyone always thought we were because they knew how much shit he would give me. And I think he just felt bad for me, like this little white girl in Hawaii fucking getting abused and robbed and taken advantage of by everyone she meets. So he was definitely a blessing in my recovery. But it was in 2020 that I finally made moves to come back home. I was 31, and I had found out that I was pregnant at the 4 month mark. I didn't know because I didn't have a period. I was actually at the hospital getting an abscess drained when I found out that I was pregnant. And so I went to Planned Parenthood, and I had only been sleeping with one man at this point. He was like another Hawaiian local man. But anyways, had infections all over me still, shooting heroin and meth. And at this point, I'm doing fentanyl now too. I was not ready to bring a child into this world. And so I made the really painful decision to go get an abortion. And this is like probably the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me. But I didn't know that it was going to be like so painful. They told me it was going to feel like period cramps. And it was painful to the point where I couldn't finish the procedure. And so they were like halfway done, and I had to go home with a diaper on that night and go back the next day for anesthesia. And so that was so traumatizing, like a 2 day process. And I don't know, that didn't really hit me until recently, as far as like any feelings about that. Like after everything that happened with Austin, I was numb. I never cried, no matter what happened to me, no matter what man assaulted me or the man that raped me, like I never cried. I was just so disassociated from it all. And I was just go shoot more heroin, shoot more meth. Um, and so, yeah, in 2020, after I had the abortion, and I also had a really bad infection on my leg. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the screen, but there it is. See that scar?
Yeah.
That was one big hole right there, and my whole leg was infected, and so that was another like life-threatening thing that almost killed me. So my parents brought me home finally in 2020, and I get on methadone, and I start going to outpatient. I'm living with my parents. I'm going to outpatient on Zoom. But really quickly, before I left Hawaii, I was living in Fred's studio with him, and there was another girl that was there with us too. And I knew when I said goodbye to Fred that day in my soul that it might be the last time I saw him, because I didn't know when I was going to come back to Hawaii. And he was an older man and his health was he was struggling with his health. And so I didn't know if I was going to see him again. And I told this girl, I said, please look out for him. Like, make sure he takes his meds. Don't give him any fentanyl. Like at this point, Fred would do like a tiny little muscle shot of heroin every so often. He would smoke meth and like get high with us, but he wasn't doing fentanyl. He was like, oh, the fucking shit. He hated seeing us do it. But sure enough, she ended up giving him some, and he ended up overdosing and dying. That didn't, I didn't, that didn't happen until I had been home for like a year though. Um, so I came home in 2020. I said goodbye to Fred. I was like, I love you so much. And got on methadone, started doing outpatient, got involved with a really asshole guy that cheated on me. And he was a fucking loser. He literally was on probation for like beating his fucking wife. And I was like, oh my God, my parents hated him. Like my ticker was so bad. Keep in mind, my self-esteem is like
Yeah.
below zero.
Yeah.
Fucking, I also had another boyfriend after Austin, like when I was selling heroin. Again, he was this really like hot, attractive, Hawaiian mixed local dude that was only with me because I was selling heroin. We were together for like a year, and we only had sex like 3 times. He would tell people like, oh, she's hot, but she's fat. I'm just with her because she sells dope. And like, I knew this, and I would make excuses for him. And so my self-esteem was just non-existent at this point. And also I had a lot of like sexual trauma happen with the 8 years that I did, on and off like sex work. I got raped and assaulted and robbed and all that jazz, but still working through all that. Um, So what happened? One night I decided that I could drink and I would be fine. And I took 4 shots of my parents' Bacardi. And literally that night, I was shooting meth and heroin and fentanyl. I didn't even know where to get it, but I was like babysitting for my cousin's kids. And so I had just gotten like $500. And I think getting the money was kind of a trigger. And so I went out on a hunt and I ended up finding meth, heroin, and fentanyl. And that cracked out video that you see of me often that I post a lot, that was after 1 month into my relapse. I relapsed in March of 2021 on alcohol, and then I used all through April. And it took a month for me to get that bad again. Like I was 6 months sober or so when I had relapsed. But anyways, so I ended up back at Serenity House. Actually, no, I ended up in a psych ward. First, my dad came and saw me at a motel I was staying at and absolutely lost his, like, devastated him. He had never seen me like that. It was the same day that I took that crazy video. So he saw me that day in person. He took me to the methadone clinic to dose. That's why I was with him. And we ended up getting into a huge fight in the car outside the methadone clinic, and he left me. I told him just leave, and I made a big scene at the methadone clinic. I don't remember what happened, but anyways, so it traumatized my dad though. He went home and he couldn't get out of bed for the rest of the day. My dad had a brain tumor in 2018 and 17, 18. He had to have 3 open brain surgeries. And this all happened in between me almost dying in Hawaii and me coming home from Hawaii. So those 4 years, my my family here in California went through a lot, and I was still in Hawaii, escaping from it because I didn't want to go face all that. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping around a bit, but anyways, my spiritual awakening, the first one, happened when I ended up back at Serenity House, because I realized that I had gone. It was 2021 at this point. I was at Serenity House in 2009 or 10 for the first time. So it was about 10 or 11 years. And I suddenly realized that I had went to Serenity House, went all the way around the world, or not the world, the ocean. Bitch, I went, not you're a bitch, like to me. Bitch, you went halfway all the way across the ocean and back for 10 fucking years, and you're back at the same rehab. Like, what are you going to do? But way worse. I'm 10 years older. I got scars all over me. I had an abortion. I almost died. I mean, so that was when I realized, like, I need to do something about this. Holy fucking shit. And so I was on methadone at Serenity House. Thank God they let you take methadone. And the last time that I used drugs was August 18th of 2021. I used a couple times while I was in treatment. I was in treatment there for 4 months, and I work there now, and we're harm reduction. So we do not kick people out for relapsing. Like, we will work with you. And so I relapsed 4 times while I was there in the 4 months. And I remember using the very last time, and it didn't even do anything at all. I couldn't feel it at all. And I was like, this is fucking pointless and such a waste. And so I finally just committed to doing it. And so I graduated treatment in September. I only had like 30 days clean when I graduated, but I went into sober living. And that was when I found out that Fred died. So I was like a month sober when Fred died. And I remember being torn. Half of me wanted to just say, fuck it. I was in so much pain and I was so sad. Because the girl called me and told me he died, and then she blocked me. And I knew there was some foul play that went on that she didn't want to tell me about. And I still to this day don't really know what happened. But I do know that she like took over his apartment after he died and never reported, never called his sister or anything. And his body sat at the morgue for 2 months. And I got a message on Facebook from Fred's sister saying, why didn't she? I just found out that Fred died. And this was 2 months later. And I told her, I'm not there anymore. I don't know what happened. And I told her who was there. April was there. But anyway, so that was really, really hard for me. But that was when I decided that, like, I'm done, partially at Serenity House when I realized that I went all the way around the ocean and back, and then partially when Fred died. Those are like the two spiritual awakening moments I had where I finally surrendered everything. And I said, I'm going to do this, whatever it takes, God. You want me to go to meetings, women's meetings? Fine. You want me to work my stuff? Fine. I'll fucking do it already. I'm done being stubborn. I'm done disappointing my family. I'm done disappointing myself. I'm 31. I got nothing to show for it. You know, went to college twice, dropped out. There was another college attempt at somewhere in there, but and so finally I committed to it and started going to a lot of meetings, and I got a job at Target. I lived in sober living. Another really like God shot about my story is 4 days after Fred passed away, I met Bradley, who I'm with now, my boyfriend. Um, I remember walking into outpatient. This is when I'm in outpatient, I'm in sober living. And I walk in and I see this 6 foot plus tall tattooed guy holding a helmet, like totally my type. And I had told my sponsor and God and everybody, I'm not going to date anybody. I'm not getting involved with anybody. And then boom, God puts him in my life. And I had a hat on that day. And I remember thinking, oh God, what the fuck? And sure enough, like there, you couldn't deny, like we couldn't stop looking at each other. And here we are over 2.5 years later, talking about having kids and getting married. So since then, what my life has looked like, God, so many blessings have happened. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Part of my story is, the medicated assisted treatment part. And so I was on methadone, and I tapered very slowly all the way down from 170 milligrams to 14. That took me about 2.5 years to do that. So once I hit 14 milligrams, I decided that I was going to switch to Sublocade, which is like it's like Suboxone in a shot that lasts all month long. So you don't have to take it every day. It's like this little pellet that goes in your stomach and it slowly dissolves all month. And so February 11th, I believe, was the last time I took methadone. And I switched to Subutex for 2 months. And then I got my first Sublocade shot. You're supposed to get three, a 300, a 300, and a 100 milligram. And that's the best way to do it so that you don't feel withdrawals. Because the little pellet inside, like it dissolves so slowly that instead of like how it works is it just gives you a steady dose of medication all day. Whereas when you take a pill every morning, put it under your tongue, you get the spike and then it wears off and you have to take it again the next day. And then every 24 hours you have to take it. And so it is kind of an adjustment. But like I can say that I've tapered all the way off of methadone utilizing this method.
Can you tell us, because I haven't had a lot of people on who've done medication assisted treatment. So can you let us know, like, what does methadone do for you?
Methadone, Suboxone, and Sublocade and Subutex are all the different forms of medicated assisted treatment. Methadone is a full opiate. It does not produce euphoria though. So when you take it, it takes your symptoms away, but it doesn't like get you high. Well, some people it might get them high. Suboxone is a partial opioid, and it also has naloxone in it. So if you do decide to go out and what these medications do is it helps these people transition from being physically dependent on, an illicit substance, say fentanyl or heroin, and be able to manage their life without opiate withdrawals are horrific. They last, the really intense part of it lasts for 2 to 3 weeks. And then but there's a misconception with these medications that they get you high and that they're the same thing as heroin or fentanyl. And they are by far not at all. They are a replacement medication that is, I don't know. There's so many mixed opinions on it. And
and there is a lot of opinions. There's even, alcohol, I'm an alcoholic, and I was always told, because I worked in AA and in treatment, and it was like, if you aren't getting sober or aren't able to stay sober, it's like something you're doing or not trying. And I relapsed always for like 2 decades. And I finally moved back home, which is hilarious because coming back to your hometown, right, sucks. You don't want to do it. And I got on Vivitrol, which helps with cravings, right? And I have been sober for almost 3 years. So it was almost like the same thing for me. Like people were like, you can't do medication, you can't. And I'm like, why? Yeah, it
I'm so
helps. And
glad.
I've been sober.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you just brought that up, because that's what I was going to compare it to, is like Vivitrol or naltrexone. There are other alternatives. Like, yeah, if you abuse your methadone or Suboxone, like, yeah, it might get you sleepy or messed up. But if you take it at the right dose, it's all about the dosage. Like, if you're on it with the right dose, you will be completely normal all the way. You will not feel high. You will not nod out. And if you are high or nodding out, you're on too much. And so
Right.
that's why there's a misconception about it. It never got me high though. Like, even when I was on a really high dose of methadone, 172 milligrams is really high, but it still never like made me not out. Like I said, I have a high fucking tolerance for everything. To this day, I have never overdosed once. I've had a couple seizures. From like one time I was trying to get that vein in my neck and I missed and I shot the whole shot in the artery. It was a half a gram of, or it was a quarter gram of heroin and like a little bit of meth, and I shot it into an artery. And Fred said I started seizing and I almost bit my tongue off. My tongue was like swollen as fuck for the next week. I like,
Oh,
oh my God, so many near death experiences. But yeah, I'm a big believer in medicated assisted treatment.
yeah,
I think,
I definitely think that I've seen a lot of people that wouldn't have been able to live without it, even as like long term, right? Because it's better than not being okay, right? If you're able to function, you're able to live your life, I'm for it. And I still 3 years in, I take Vivitrol. So it saved my life. So I'm a
yeah,
fan.
yeah, I really wish there wasn't like so much stigma attached to things. But you know what? Whatever keeps you sober, like this shit has helped me stay sober, and I wouldn't have been able to get this much clean time without those medications. I don't personally feel. um
Right.
yeah, I'm a big supporter in it. But we still like find drugs on site all the time. Women are using on site all the time. And so I've actually like had a full pipe of meth in my hand at one point since I've been working there. But luckily, like I had another staff member with me. Not saying that I would go and like do it, but I never thought that that day would come, where I would be the one doling out controlled medications, and the count is actually correct and I'm not stealing them.
Right.
Because
Right.
I'm a polysubstance addict. I also did a lot of Xanax. So
Mhm.
my time in Hawaii, that whole 10 years that I spent there, was it's just like I only remember bits and pieces.
Right. So what does your life look like today? I know you're, happily in a relationship, thinking about having babies. What else?
I like to consider my life right now balls to the wall healing. I am doing everything that I can to heal, from EMDR therapy to breath work to guided meditation to women's retreats to step work, to helping out the newcomer, to being of service, all of those things. I never did them before. I was introduced to AA. Oh, I told you that I left high school for a little bit to go to rehab. Yeah, I did.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I was 16, and it was there that I was introduced to AA. And I remember being at a meeting in like Orange County. I didn't know anybody there. And like this older Black man was sharing, and the 12 steps were behind him. And I do remember seeing kind of like a light coming out from behind him. And I'm thinking, why is this? It's God is telling me right now that this is where I need to be. But I was also really bitter about that, because that means that I am an alcoholic and an addict. And that means that I am one of these people, and there's no denying it. And if I do not do something, if I don't do all those things that I just listed to you, I will end up back with a needle in my arm. I definitely will. And this is not something that I think I'll ever be, we'll never be healed. We'll never be at the finish line. this is a constant, willingness to change your life and be teachable and be open-minded. I run groups. I'm a SUD counselor at Serenity House. I'm almost a certified KDAC. I have like maybe two more classes left. I have a 4.0. I'm
Love
part
that.
of the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. Um, I don't know if I do probably want to do further schooling than just a certificate, like maybe social work or some type of degree where I can make more money. But ultimately, I want to work in the field. I'm also writing a book. I'm going to be a co-author on a book by the publishing company is called Unstoppable Publishing. And she's at this older lady, Lawanda. She's written a bunch of books already. She wrote Alice in Crackland. If you look her name up on Amazon, she has a bunch of books already. But her, me, and my other friend Alicia, and I think one other woman are all going to have our stories in one book called Unsilenced, and it's going to be a compilation. It's going to be our stories of addiction and abuse and being trafficked. All of us at one point, were prostitutes that were trafficked or pressured in some way into doing that. So that we have about a month, I think, until everybody needs to be completely done with theirs. So that's really exciting. Like, it doesn't feel real to me, but God is like, all right, if you want to put in the work and do all these things, then I'm going to reward you. I'm going to let you know that I'm here, that I see your hard work, and I'm going to make it worth it. I'm still waiting for like my social medias to blow up. I've got 15K on TikTok right now. I don't even know if I follow you on TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
Yep.
Okay,
I don't know if I follow you either.
okay, well, we definitely should.
We have to do it.
Yeah, and I really want to do like the full-time influencer thing, like just recovery content, beauty. I feel like everybody today wants to be an influencer, but I really do. Like, I want to share my story with the world and um and and be okay with it. I also I wasn't as funny this time, but like the last time I told my story, I kind of had a humor to it and I told more jokes. But I like to, not make light of my past, but there's things that I can laugh about today. I mean,
Right.
the things that I saw as a sex worker, between a man wanting to wear a diaper, between, oh God, just men wanting to do some weird ass shit. But it's funny to
I
laugh
can't
about.
imagine.
Yeah. So I just finished my fifth step, so I'm on my sixth step now. I will have 3 years sober in August. Last time I used was August 18th, so that means my clean date is August 19th of 2021. My boyfriend Bradley just hit 3 years. Um, but yeah, I love where I work. It's a big rehab with like 60 women. Most of our women are court ordered from jail or CWS cases. So part of my role is working with probation officers and CWS workers for reunification and visits. I'm a big advocate for allowing my clients to see their kids and stuff. The counselor is the go-to person to plan all that, and so that's a big part of my job. And I absolutely love seeing my clients see their kids when they haven't seen them in a while for a visit and their face just light up. And it's like absolutely rewarding, but it's also extremely challenging. Working in treatment, as I'm sure you know, is very, very challenging. But I feel like it has changed me and taught me a lot. And it makes me a better person every day because it teaches me to be kind and compassionate and patient and loving and caring, because I relapsed in treatment there. So who am I to judge if someone decides to go out and relapse? Like the other women always shame the girls, like, and start like being mean to them when they relapse. I'm like, no, you guys, that's when they need you the most.
Right.
Like they always think the counselors are going to be mad at them, but it's like, no, I am not mad at all. I'm here for you more now. Like, what's going on? There must be something going on, and we're going to work through it together. So I think that my job has been a blessing from God. And, my parents and our relationship is restored and their health has improved. My hep C has gone away. Um, let's see, I've lost about 60 pounds, and I still struggle with eating problems. Like, I'm on Ozempic right now because I have such bad, you know, I'm a binge eater and I'm a bulimic, but I haven't thrown up in years. But that's what I used to do when I was like younger.
I
Um,
take Zepbound. When I got sober, I got all the way up to 300 pounds. So I'm down like 130 and I'm super excited. But I started Zepbound like 4 weeks ago. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
that's amazing. Good for you. That is a lot of weight to lose.
Yeah. And I
So you just
still,
started the
um,
Ozempic?
yeah. So I had the gastric sleeve and I lost like 130. And then I started the Zepbound like 4 weeks ago to help with like more weight loss.
Okay. Does it, do you get sick from it ever?
Yeah, so first I was on Ozempic. I thought I was gonna die. That was rough.
Yeah.
So I switched to Zepbound and it's not as bad. I still get like a little nauseous, but it's not as bad at all. So I'm a fan. I think when you get sober and when you're in your addiction, right? Your eating habits are crazy. You're either gaining, losing, whatever. There's no like, because your priority is drinking or using or whatever you're doing. And then you get sober and it's like, what do I do now? I eat.
Yeah. I see women gain so much weight. I mean, in the 3 to 4 months that they're with us, some of them, yeah, but hey, it
Yes.
happens. I try and encourage, them to get out and walk um, but yeah, oh my God, I feel like you and I are like both on the same path towards
Yes, I
healing.
was going to tell you we need to go on a retreat together. I want to go on a retreat so bad.
Okay, well, the next one is going to be next summer, unless we find one sooner. But the Las Hermanas Women's Retreat was absolutely amazing. There was like 200 women there. And then I also have a home group, a women's home group. I'm the secretary there right now. I've known these women since I came home from Hawaii. So going on 4 years. And they were with me through my relapse and have watched me taper all the way off. And they have validated my recovery. And some meetings like, oh, if you're on methadone you can't take tokens or some dumb bullshit. And so, but this meeting never did that. So that's what I've done, is I've highly immersed myself in women's meetings. I would
Yeah.
say my first year of recovery I was kind of depressed. Like, honestly, I didn't really do any step work, I didn't do therapy. I saved all of that. Like, I kept putting it off and putting it off, and I didn't actually start all that until my second year of sobriety. And since then, I feel like I have just blossomed. I wish I would have done it earlier. So like, that's what my words to your audience are to do balls to the wall healing. Do it all.
Yes. So that is the last question on everyone. So we're going to do it. If you have to leave the audience with anything, and tell them your social media stuff so they can follow you. But what's the one thing you want them to remember from you?
I want you to remember balls to the wall healing, because if you are trying to change your life, no matter whether it's drugs and alcohol, weight loss, food, you need to fully commit. Balls to the wall healing. Don't just change one behavior, change it all. Be open minded. Try new things. The 3 things that have changed my life the most are breath work, EMDR therapy, and women's retreats. So if you're a male, go on men's retreats, just do everything you can so that you can heal and be a better person, because that's not going to come to you. You have to go out and chase it. If you stop the drugs and alcohol, that's fine. But if you want to better your life, you got to put in the work. You know what I mean? So get yourself a sponsor that's going to, hold you accountable, get your steps done, and get therapy. I mean, really, that's what it took for me to finally start feeling really happy and like good in my skin. So I don't even know how long we've been talking, but I hope I didn't go too long.
No, you're good. We're right on point. But tell them your social medias so they
Oh
can
yeah.
follow you if
Okay.
they don't already.
Okay. So my social media is Major Christina 89. It's Christina with a CH. I have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I think YouTube. Oh, and Newsbreak. I actually have an account on Newsbreak that I post on a lot. It's the same name, Major Christina 89. And please follow me. And if you guys have any questions or want to message me, I always try and respond to people. If you feel weird reaching out, don't. Like I'm really personable and I love helping people. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being on.